got hit in the head and my head hit the glass. And I just knew like when my vision went blue, green, like burgundy, everything was like way off.
Life doesn't always turn out the way we want it to. Millions of people get seriously injured or ill every year, putting their lives on halt. This may cause some of you to lose your jobs, your health, and more importantly, your sense of purpose. I believe that no matter how hopeless and helpless you might feel right now, God still has a purpose for you. This show was created to help you find that purpose, to inspire you to not give up, and to find ways to find fulfillment and make your life meaningful. It does not matter how dim your past or present looks like, as long as you are breathing, you can always find the way to say, "My future is alive." Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Christine Waters, and I hope you enjoy this show. Fall is finally here, everyone, in upstate New York, and most of the leaves are starting to fall. Unfortunately, we still don't have a sign of the pandemic leaving us. In fact, I got sick myself with the COVID-19. However, the Lord is still good. He's helped me through that. I hope in this episode where I talk to the incredible artist, Mr. Michael Wills, that you'll be encouraged, be inspired, know that there's still hope no matter what we face. So without further ado, let's welcome Michael Wills. So as a Canadian, you grew up, as your website says, you grew up with a hockey stick
Yeah, pretty
in your
much. Yeah.
in your hand.
So
And
it was one of those things where it was like every Canadian had a dream, and since like birth, it was like put skates on them kind of thing. It was kind of cool that my dad was kind of a really good hockey player,
yeah,
and kind of owe a lot to his talents and abilities. So he pretty much put me on skates at a young age, and I kind of was behind on a lot of things with everyone,
hmm
and I just had to push myself to kind of be better, and I had to grind it out. But essentially, I had to push past some obstacles that way, and I ended up playing like college hockey in the States, and playing pro. So it was nice.
yeah, cool. So is that you've always wanted to be a pro hockey player then, growing up?
Ever ever since I kind of put on skates in the stick in my hand, it was like I wanted to make the NHL, right? And
hmm
every Canadian boy has that dream of like, I really want to. And I just kind of stuck with it and kept grinding. And then it was like, okay, these options are fading. So it was like, yep, let's play some pro hockey and try to live that dream and live
hmm
that life of just doing like something that you love doing. So I really wanted to try and go to my fullest to that potential and try to make it. So yeah, and I eventually did it. So I was pretty happy.
Right, right. And so to train to be a professional hockey player, you probably had to sacrifice like a lot of your summers and a lot of time, money probably.
It was crazy how kids would play video games and like all my friends had like different hobbies and whatnot and thing. I just had like one thing. It was just like hockey. That was it. Like eat, sleep, breathe it, and then
Yeah,
train all in the summers when I was a kid into my teenager years, and then it was just like I'm on the ice every day kind of thing. So it's like a full time job. And
right, right. Cool. And that's what eventually opened the door for you to go to SUNY Oswego, right? To that was your scholarship. You were a hockey player, and you majored in arts.
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, I got a hockey scholarship down the states to Merrimack College.
hmm
For my two, it was like I went there for 2 years and then
Yeah.
got traded to Oswego, and I loved every second of going to Oswego. It was so fun.
hmm
Yeah, and majoring in art was a little different. All the
Yeah.
guys were like, Willsie's an artist. That's kind of weird. But it was kind of cool to have that diversity on the team. There was a
Yeah.
couple guys that were into music and like different like sports medicine stuff like that. So we had some diversity that way, and it was fun.
Cool. And and then eventually after college, you that's when you went to pro hockey. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it was essentially like, well, after college, this is the next step, and I really wanted to pursue it, and I stayed to finish up my degree at Oswego that summer. And I was
Mm-hmm.
training, and I was coming down to the wire. I really wanted to go to Europe. Nothing was kind of happening, so I ended up playing for the SP in Macon, Georgia. So I was kind of training, sleeping in my car. Didn't have a house. It was kind of funny that
Mm,
way. And then going to the cafeteria, eating, and then it's like, all right, well, time to go to Georgia and drive down there. So
mm-hmm.
it was an awesome experience. I would do it all over again if I could.
Yeah.
But just to have like people Oswego to have your back and whatnot through whether it was hockey community, Christian community, art
Mm-hmm.
community, like everyone was kind of on board with what you were doing. And so I eventually got down to Macon, played a season there, and then played over in Europe for a little bit, and then had to retire. So because of concussions, actually.
Yeah, because of concussions. Wow. But you had a lot invested in that game, and so it paid off in the end. You got to go pro. And how was it like transitioning from having to retire from hockey and then having to go to just focusing on your arts? Was it heartbreaking?
It was very heartbreaking to me to know that you put so much time and effort and unseen hours in that nobody saw, and just to have it like, you know just like that, like a snap of a finger, just gone. And I had to grieve that out essentially. And it took me a while because, you fall into depression, you fall into, suicidal thoughts, like deep emotional things, because you're essentially grieving like almost like a heartache, right? Like where you're like broken up with, and that was my like girlfriend, right? I did it for 26 years.
Almost like your wife, not just your girlfriend, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like I was married to the game, and it was so hard to let that go instantly, and then just to grieve that loss. So unhealthy, but it made me stronger today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very painful, but I ended up transitioning to painting, and got to express my emotions that way, and
Yeah.
painted that out, I guess, of me. So
Yeah, that must have been difficult. Any major change, right? Like, plus, it wasn't really expected.
no, not really. Like I ended up like playing, got a concussion my last season in Macon,
Mm-hmm.
thought I was gonna retire, and then I was like, no, like I'm not ready to give it up. My heart's not ready, my mind's not ready, but there
Mm-hmm.
was no options. And
Mm-hmm.
then split second, Belgium calls are like, we want you. Let's go over here. Like we'll fly over. I ended up taking the offer. I was like, I got nothing to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as I get over there, politics happened. They traded me to Serbia, and I ended up playing in Serbia for about a month. Never
Mm-hmm.
getting paid, kind of
Oh,
mafia-based league and team. And then I ended up just coming home because the concussions were too much. Like I couldn't handle the pressure in my brain.
mm-hmm.
So I literally had to come home, and that was that was a moment of rock bottom to me.
Yeah.
Very depressed that I felt like I gave up. Like I felt like I didn't give up, but I felt like I was letting people down,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was me or my family. Like I think I had more to give, and I knew my brain couldn't.
Yeah. And this was probably your sixth, seventh concussion by
Yeah, that
that
was my
point?
seventh concussion, and it just one compounds after another, and
Right.
it took me longer to recover from this one. So I should have like recovered more, maybe taken a year off of hockey and tried to get back into it. But
Hmm.
I was so like, no, I got to do it. I got to do it now. I'm in the
Yeah.
shape. I'm in best shape, kind of thing. Like I need to do it. And yeah,
Yeah. And I understand because, like, concussions is very tricky. Like, sometimes you feel like you're better, but when you try to do something that you think you can do, you fall and you're like, wait, I thought I could do this, but I can't. So, no, I understand. But so, of the two passions, do you think hockey was your favorite growing up, or because you're very good at both?
yeah. It always was like I had both talents, but
Hmm.
then hockey was so prevalent because like you had to commit yourself fully to that, and art was always on the back burner. But when hockey wasn't going well, I would choose art. You know,
Hmm.
painting and
As a
stuff like
backup.
that.
Yeah.
But when art wasn't going well, hockey was my release. So it worked hand in hand that way. But it was mostly like hockey was my physical release, where art was my emotional release.
Okay.
So luckily, I found those two passions early and thrived in them and try to hone those skills. But hockey was so prevalent, like it was just every day, right?
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
just and you knew like at a young age, like if like I didn't really discuss like I always knew I could draw and really well, but I just knew in my mind like you know I gotta like this world likes to be entertained and stuff. Like I could be that guy and just play hockey and live the dream that way and the lifestyle and have the nice house and the car and the decent contract, but it just never came because injuries.
Right. And it's two different worlds because, like, in hockey, you're playing with a team, you're doing things in front of people, whereas your art is the complete opposite, as you said. So you're doing things most of the time, you're just working by yourself, right? And then once the work is done, then that's when it gets presented to the world. So I think it's a good balance if you're growing up. Like, yes, you have your social part, and then you have your alone time.
Yeah, it's so different. It's like opposite ends of the spectrum, right? But
Right.
they have similar character traits where it's still hand-eye coordination, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're taking in information from your brain so quickly and developing it into your hand and moving, right? So like if a
Right.
puck's coming in the air, you can whack it down. Where it's like you're retaining something and you paint it. So they kind of work hand in hand a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But again, hockey's way more aggressive with a team and
Right.
people and chirping and stuff like that, where
Could be bloody, right?
so tranquil and peaceful. And then you're like, oh, here's my thing, at the end of
Yeah.
it, and months later, weeks later.
Yeah.
So
So just going back to so for concussion patients, it's very common to go through anxiety and depression, especially if your concussion is really bad. How did you deal with that? I know you mentioned you painted. What were other things that you think helped you get through to the other side of that?
yeah, I found meditation, trying to focus on like soaking music, worship music, and but it was still tough. Like you'd have good days, bad weeks.
Yeah.
Um, I in my worst concussion was in Oswego. I played, got hit in the head, and my head hit the glass, and I just knew like when my vision went blue, green, like
Mm-hmm.
burgundy, everything was like way off.
Yeah.
And then I kept getting hit with it and kept playing. So I was awake for 27 days straight, and I didn't sleep like a wink. And I was
Wow.
slurring my, speech, crying all the time. I felt like a high school girl, just like crying all the time and being angry, but I didn't know what it was, and just kept getting hit in
Mm-hmm.
the head. And then
Wow.
my parents came and got me,
Yeah.
and went to the hospital, and they said you got like a massive concussion where your brain is swollen to the size of your skull, and you're bleeding out, and essentially you'll die in a week if you keep going. And so I had to shut it down. Saw a lot of doctors, and went to Dr. Jaw, like a concussion clinic in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And he essentially just like said, you got to shut everything down, like any physical activity, any art, anything that stresses your brain out,
Yeah.
um, reading, music, like computer screens, phones. So I essentially like sat in a dark room with a blindfold on for 5 months, and it was hard. It was really hard to heal, because you couldn't contact the world. You couldn't contact your friends. They had no idea what was happening.
Right.
You was isolated in this dark room with it, and just trying to like take your brain and just trying to heal it, and take it down,
Yeah.
reduce the inflammation, right? So got on a whole bunch of vitamins, antioxidants, fish oils, stuff like that. Huge amount of, and diet was massive, massive play and
Mm-hmm.
impact in that, just to go back to healing and then training again. But it was such a stressful time. It was to try to find things to do when you had 8 hours of, or 12 hours, or how many hours in the day to just try to do something, and you can't. Like, you're just
Right.
literally maybe stretching and stressing about life, like the world's passing you by, and some days you would heal, some days you wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember having to surrender to the idea, okay, I've tried to get up, but this is not working. I've tried to overcome this on my own. It's not working. All I can do right now is rest. So that's all I can do. I'm going to surrender to that and rest and heal.
Yeah, how did it like affect you in certain ways? Because I know depression and suicide hit me hard. So
I had terrible anxiety um, because I think, aside from not knowing much about concussions when I had it, that first few months of feeling like I'm getting better, and then I try to do something and I get a big setback, became traumatic for me. So that after several times of doing that, I was like, I can't do anything anymore. And so I would be really anxious to try anything. So the anxiety was terrible. I had to stay in the dark like he did for months and months. Earplugs everywhere I went because I was so sensitive to the sound as well. So it was crazy. It was, I mean, I'm a musician, so not being like, even listening to music was difficult the first few months. So for several months, but yeah, that was nuts. And a lot of people go through it, and a lot of people don't understand them. A lot of people don't understand it because it's not something that science has fully understood either.
and it's interior, it's not exterior on your body,
Right.
right? You get a wound or a broken leg or cut, and everyone's like, "Oh, what happened?"
Yeah.
But when you're in a concussion, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, you're fine." Like, you know.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, like my parents had to drive me around for a while. I saw one of my buddies one time was just slurring my speech, trying to have like a tea with him,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like, "Whoa, this is bad.
Yeah.
This is really bad." Um, and
Yeah.
the times where you felt so alone in it because no one else was contacting you or you're doing anything, you just
Right.
felt so hopeless sometimes because of your isolation.
Yeah. And the thing that that does to your brain, just the like, isolation. Like even right now, with COVID, a lot of people are isolated, and so they're saying that there's bigger increases in depression and anxiety right now.
We've already gone through it, which is funny, but like
Mm-hmm.
people that haven't even touched a concussion, like in this isolation part, and they're going AWOL, like
Right.
that's what it was. And you with music and me with art, it was like, oh, we got hobbies. We're all right. We like being alone sometimes and being,
Yeah.
that hermit a little bit, but we can get through it because we've got these things. Or I think other people would just, they cracked because they had to feel and they had to go through it. And like you said, be submissive to it, right? So,
Right. Yeah.
and surrender. And we've already, we already put in that work with,
Yeah. And you don't want to go through it again, but
no, not at all.
so you were saying you worked to overcome anxiety and depression. You worked on your health. You worked on eating right, and then as far as for your mind, you did meditation. Did faith play a big part in your recovery? Do you think?
Yeah, it was huge. Like I had to, at the time I was still like battling and warring with God on a couple things, but I knew like in end all be all, like crying and praying out and like literally like trying to tell him like, I'm hurting. Why aren't you healing me? Like,
Mhm.
can you heal me faster? And I think he allowed me to go through it
Yeah.
in order to help others, or even, just allow me to rest and feel. And I think he wanted to work on me a little bit in my life and to get rid of some things, and I never dealt with it. um and those issues came later, but I think he wanted me to be isolated with him, and I never took really the time.
Hmm.
I wish I did, but I was so caught up in the moment of being like the pain and the confusion and the, I don't know what's going on because I don't know what's, every day is like I could be gone kind of feel,
Hmm. Yeah.
because you're so depressed and you're so suicidal. And it was almost like this anxiety would come over you and you'd be paralyzed to so depressed, back to anxiety, back to depression. And then you'd be like, no, I just want to end it. Like, I'm sick of feeling this way. And, you know, allowing yourself to be weak and then, bending the knee and then talking with him, like faith did play a huge part, but I wish I did more in it. Like doing the soaking soft music and trying to meditate with him that way, and meditate on like words. And my parents would like uh, would kind of read to me about some things about the Bible, and or even like daily devotions kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's no reason to put ourselves down because we didn't do enough, right? I think the Lord pleases and delights in the little things that we could do. I mean, it was hard. Like, I know how hard it is to even just read when you're going through that confusion stuff. But so do you feel like there was a breakthrough point for you? Like a very significant time where you noticed things were changing for the better?
Yeah, there a huge breakthrough point when I woke I woke up a couple days, and then I was like, oh, it's kind of stopped hurting, so I can go walk, like Dr. Jaw said. And then I would, if walking hurt, and then it was like, okay, no, that's fine. I can go jog a little bit. If a jog hurt, I would go back to walking,
Mm-hmm.
and I would just take baby steps to try to control it, and not push myself too hard. But with
Right.
being an athlete, you always push yourself and you end up going backwards. But um, what I wanted to do was trying to just step by step, make progress.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, it's almost like like, it's weird because it's almost like a grieving process too, of like a bad breakup, of like, sometimes you just wake up one day and you feel like you're ready. like to move
Hmm.
on and to get going and to get after it. And you kind of just have to push through it a little bit. And then on the other side, you're like, oh, this feels good. I can do this. But you do have to like sit and not wallow in it, but you were it kind of handcuffs you until the point where you want to
Right.
heal, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you're allowing yourself to feel and do all the rest part, and then you feel like you wake up one day. I don't know if you had that experience, but progressively, you heal.
Slowly, progressively. It was very slow for me. It took nearly 2 years for me, so it was nuts. And then even after that, I would have big setbacks of hitting my head again, and then
Yeah, I knew the setbacks were hard because you felt like you're doing so much progress, and then you just drop, and you'd be like, you felt like you went backwards
yeah,
so many
yeah.
times.
Oh yeah, I remember thinking that okay, I feel good enough. I think I can drive my car. And I tried to drive my car and my eyes just felt really weird. So that I just had to force to I think I just turned around and just went back home. But for at least 24 hours or maybe a little more, my eyes stopped working as like a video camera. It was more like taking still shots. So I had to walk really slow because I couldn't see straight through it. It was weird. The world was I was seeing the world in still shots.
Like I don't know where you got hit, but when I got hit on like the left side, it controlled all motor skills and stuff like that. Where I like hit left to right, and I got hit on the right side really hard, and all your emotions are there. So like
Yeah, yeah.
I would
Yeah,
be up
this
and
is
down and over and under, and I couldn't
yeah.
control it. And I remember it just things not working. Like I could not make a sentence, or I
Mhm.
would be talking and then I would stop and then forget what I was saying, and not like nothing was flowing.
Yeah.
And I would just stop like mid sentence and go, like you know. So, and that was tough because having so many later in my years, I had to have surgery on my eyes to link them back together because I had so many. So,
Wow.
I was 7 days blind again. I was like, 7 days is
Oh
nothing.
wow. Yeah.
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 That surgery killed because they literally had to cauterize it because I was going blind from past concussions,
Really.
link them back together. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Now you're doing great art. Yeah. Which is awesome. I think I don't know if anybody's told you this, but when I look at your art, I feel like in the business terms, you've found your niche. You've got a unique way of like you don't fill up a canvas, and I think that makes it even more outstanding. Which is sure, sure. I love art. I grew up enjoying it, but and so if if you were to talk to someone who's going through maybe the same thing, a major injury right now, what do you think is your best advice to them or anyone that's going through a major change?
Be surrounded by people that love you and support you through this,
Mm-hmm.
because they're the ones that will get you through, because you kind of find out who your friends are in
Right.
an isolated time, actually. When people say, yeah, they'll be there, and they won't.
Mm-hmm.
And you thought you would rely on them, and they just never showed up. So you find out how strong you are in a sense of going through a change
Yeah.
of isolation or concussion, and through pain that way, because you and just allow yourself to be okay and feel in the moments. I Being a male, and you wouldn't allow yourself to cry or feel, but you just had to go through it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you punch yourself. You're like, no, no, I'm fine. Like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. But you end up doing it. So just allow yourself to feel and go through that like slow process of healing. And
Mm-hmm.
it is so daunting sometimes, but it you find out what you're made of. Truly, like
Right.
it's crazy how uncomfortable change is. But my dad always said, be comfortable by being uncomfortable.
Right. Right.
So
That's a good thing to say. Yeah.
yeah, that's how like you get to the next level and change and evolve, is through pain usually.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I would say the advice is just surround yourself with loved ones that truly care about you, and have your back, and then allow yourself to feel and heal in that way. So
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for that. So, if anybody would want to connect with you, you've got your website, of course, michaelwillsarts.com. And then is Instagram the best place for them to?
yeah, yeah. Instagram's one of the top places to reach me. Michael Will's Art, and the same with my, like you said, website or Facebook, but mainly Instagram is where people reach out, because I'm always on there, kind of.
Yeah. Do you have any current projects or upcoming ones?
I'm working on a couple commissions right now. I just finished one, so I'll show you right here. Bring it up. So yeah, I just finished a woman here. So yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah, you can see that. So yeah, I just finished
Nice.
that, and kind of allowed. I'm kind of into like figurative right now. So before I was
Mm-hmm.
into cityscapes, my eyes were going, and now I'm switched to that. And then who knows? Like I might go back to cityscapes, but I was like, the
Yeah.
one behind me is all, you got nature landscapes scene. You got the cityscape over here,
Right. Yeah.
and yeah, and then I got like a ship painting. So I like to be diverse, not all, but again,
And you also adjust to whatever the commission is for.
yeah.
Oh,
So if someone's like, hey, I want a landscape of this, like, okay, yeah, this, how big? Well, this is what I want, and you're like, okay, I'll do it. So
cool.
yeah, and hopefully with COVID subsides here soon, that we start having like personal art exhibitions, not just online. So yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully there's a couple things in the work in the future. I can't really say right now because it's still up in the air, but
Mm-hmm.
hopefully something in the States. So I'm working towards that.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate you and sharing your story and being vulnerable.
And thank you for having me. And isn't it crazy how you and I have gone through the same things, and
Yeah. I mean,
we got
you
through it.
more than
So
I did, but yeah.
yeah, praise Jesus for that.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
All
you have
right.
a good evening.
You too. Take care. Thanks
You
again.
too. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed this episode of My Future is Alive and my conversation with Michael Wells. Remember that no matter what we face, we can always say, My future is alive. God bless.